Okay. So I'm glad there are so many people interested in our bylaw work. That's nice to see. We've been doing this for, been working on this for about a year, including starting from our strategic, starting actually from presentations by Foraker on how to, best practices for nonprofits back in September, November last year, then going through our strategic plan day in March. And then we've had many bylaw meetings. So we have our agenda today. We're actually there are two separate meetings that we're holding. First one, we're going to hold the special meeting on the bylaw committee for the first probably 45 minutes, maybe a little longer, 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll move on to some executive committee issues. So we'll kick off by if the people who are on the bylaw committee can just introduce themselves and say hello first.
I'm happy to go first. My name is Sarah Prescott. I am the Vice President on the Executive Board of the Federation of Community Councils and also the President of the Spinard Community Council.
Thank you. I see Daryl.
Hello, I'm Daryl Hess. I'm the ombudsman for the municipality, and I guess I'm the community council guru at the Muni.
Thank you. Who else is looking at the list of names? Who else is on the bylaw committee who's present today? Okay, so it looks like there's just three of us. And then, so just in terms of process, we have these meetings are open to the public. Any member, any delegates can speak and can add, and then we'll make sure there's opportunity for other comments as well towards the end of the first part. So I'll start off. So we had, as you know, we've been talking about this for about 6 months. I've noticed recently there's been a lot of misunderstanding of what the changes are and mischaracterization. I wouldn't quite say misinformation, but that's understandable. This is something that's taken us quite a long while to get our heads around, I think. A lot of the confusion seems to be around what the FCC itself is as a non-profit versus what community councils do and what community councils do when the FCC, in meetings that are held by the FCC but aren't actually part of the FCC itself. So for the last year or so, we've held our monthly meetings. We split them into two. The first half has been non-profit work, which is about the FCC itself, how it's managed, finances the FCC, budget questions, policy changes, things like that, about the internals of the nonprofit. And then the second half, the second hour, has been the coalition meeting. And the coalition meeting is where, while it's held by the FCC, it's not the FCC itself. It's community councils getting together, talking about topics, getting presentations from the assembly, school board, potentially legislatures, recently planning department, mayor's office, and presentations on other particular topics. And then we discuss them. We discuss community council businesses. That's all something that we do as a coalition. So that's a group of community councils getting together. It is not the FCC. It's held after our FCC internal meeting, but it is not the FCC that's doing that. We're just, the FCC is just providing the facilities in the same way as in your community council meetings, the FCC provides OWL. It might provide other resources, posts, minutes, things like that. So they're two different things. So it's very clear that this is kind of a complex topic. And I think a lot of people aren't that clear about the difference between the coalition and the FCC itself. So one of the things, Ali, do you have the draft document which I put together and sent around before this meeting? You have that available. I'm loath to try and share from my computer because
you want me to
I've
drop
some issues.
chat?
Do you have it that you could actually share it?
I should be able to. Yeah, give me just 1 sec.
So one of the things we're trying to do to make this clearer is to explicitly mention, while we don't mention the services the FCC provide within the bylaws, because they're not typically within the bylaws. We're going to call out the coalition and talk about the coalition as something separate. And then one of the suggestions we've had, I think it's a great suggestion, is to have a separate document about what the coalition is and what its standing rules are. So that's something which we will call out in the bylaws, but isn't in the bylaws. It'll be a separate document. So we'll
Which
get that up in a
document would you like
second.
me to share
Let me
first?
just check. I'm just going back to my email.
Which document would you like shared first,
Yeah, I'm
Mike?
just checking. There were
Okay.
four in that email. I think it's the last draft. So that's working document version 3.
Version.
4, sorry, version 4.
Okay, that should be popping up. I'm gonna go ahead and expand it.
Thanks.
Mhm.
So version 4, which I know committee members have, and I think it's published on the website. This takes into account a lot of feedback we've had. So I'm just going to briefly mention the changes at the beginning, and then we'll focus on changes further down. So it expands a little on the purpose. It's particularly, it particularly calls out the reference out to the charter, which is what constitutes the legal sort of basis for community councils, and then also includes the language that the FCC is that's tied to the FCC grant that prevents the FCC from endorsing candidates, performing any activities that are influence legislation in any way. And that includes things like ordinances, resolutions, things like that. So the FCC itself, as a non-profit, is not allowed under our grant terms to take a position on any activities by the municipality, with the possible exception of activities directly related to the grant for the FCC. I think we can ask for budget, but things like, for example, TISDO, the FCC doesn't take a position on that. Community councils absolutely can. And when there are coalition meetings, although they might be in the FCC office, that's just facilitation, which is part of our core mission. When community councils are meeting either individually or together, they absolutely can take positions on these things, but the FCC itself can't. So all of this document is about the FCC as a non-profit and how it manages itself, and is not tied to what community councils do or what community councils or groups of community councils can do, including when the FCC is providing support resources for those community councils. So section around the purpose has been updated, just put into more information to explain the issue about the restrictions. And then section further down on coalition, which is, I think it's Article 8 on page 12, I think it is. Can you go down to there? There you go. It's a little difficult to see. Maybe you can enlarge the lower part of that page, Ali.
Section, correct?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to see, I think, with draft written so boldly on top of it. But if you just expand, if you could expand that, just make it larger on the screen.
Yeah, let me unbold that real quick and zoom in.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Right. So what we're trying to do here is, actually, I'll read it out as well. So this calls out the coalition of members, which as said is currently we do as our second hour of our meetings. Section 1 purpose. The purpose of the coalition of members, also known as the coalition of community councils or coalition, is to fill the purpose of the organization by providing an opportunity for collaboration amongst individual member councils. In Section 2, rules of procedure. The coalition shall follow its standing rules of procedure and Robert's Rules of Orders, revised current edition, to conduct meetings except where they conflict with provisions of these bylaws or individual member council bylaws. So what this does is just say there is this separate thing called a coalition of members, and it follows its own meeting rules, which we have a draft version of that, but that sits outside the bylaws. The bylaws are just about the internal structure of the FCC, what we do internally, how we manage our own processes, how we manage our own, how we set up our own policies, how we manage ourselves, how we elect officers, etc. So the biggest change really is that call out for the coalition. There's a number of other smaller changes in here, and we can get into those if we need to. But I'll stop talking for now and make sure that the other bylaw members have an opportunity to comment on this or add any other comments. I'll start with you, Sarah.
Yes, I actually do have some comments.
Hi, Carrie.
Actually, I'm
You're
sorry.
not. That's right. So just to clarify, are you currently a delegate?
I am an alternate delegate. Yep. For
Right.
Sand Life.
So
Sure.
we're going to start off by just making sure that the bylaw committee members are get the
Oh,
opportunity to
you
speak
said other
first.
comments. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought-
Sorry, that's fine. And
Okay.
then we'll move on to other delegates, alternate delegates, and then if there's any members of the public as well, we can move on to those as well. Let's start with Sarah. Sarah and Daryl at the moment.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, no, I think you covered it really well. I do appreciate that we added the coalition of members in there. Determining the difference between the two was my heavy lift when I first started attending FCC meetings and trying to figure out what does each group do. So I appreciate that that's in there. And I know that this is, yeah, a big heady document. So I'm anxious to hear other questions as well to see what we could clarify. But yeah, no, great job going over the big document and the changes that have been made.
Thank you. Daryl, do you have any questions or thoughts or comments?
I agree with Sarah. I think it's important to have that explanation in there because at the beginning of this process, I was confused. And I've been involved with community councils for decades, and I think it does a good job of clarifying the different roles of the different entities, who they are and what they are.
Right, thanks. I know I've seen a lot of things recently worried about what this document does to community councils and what changes it makes to community councils. And hopefully this is clear. It's clearer that it makes no changes at all to community councils. Community councils are completely independent organizations. The FCC is a support organization for them. The analogy I've used, I don't know if this is helpful or not helpful, but the analogy I've used is my spouse is on the board of directors for a health clinic. And board of directors meetings, they discuss, when they need to, if they need to get a new ED, they'll go through the hiring process for the executive director. They discuss various policies, maybe, if they're going to use if they're going to change their sliding scale of payments, they'll discuss that. They discuss the budget, they discuss strategy, they discuss governance. What they don't do is prescribe any drugs. They don't prescribe drugs. They don't see patients. All the clinical stuff is done completely separately. That's what the staff are for. The staff are to do the clinical work and do the day-to-day running of the organization. But when it comes to setting policies, that's what the board of directors does. With the FCC, the policies around the FCC would be done by the board of directors, is currently done by the board of delegates. But when it comes to actually support of individual community councils, that's done by staff, the same way as seeing patients is done by the clinical staff, the clinic. The board of directors doesn't make any difference really to it doesn't make any difference to services unless it's something like buying a new X-ray machine. So, in these big things that involve capital purchases, if we want more out systems, things like that, the board of directors get involved. But day-to-day activity done purely by the staff, support of community councils done purely by the staff. That's the kind of one of the differences here between what we're talking about, which is the FCC itself versus the services the FCC provides. Daryl, I think I saw you potentially with a question or a comment.
No, but
Okay.
I did want to say I have had several inquiries from community councils who were under the impression that the changes to the Federation's bylaws would require councils to change their bylaws. And I've been explaining to them that that is absolutely not the case, that none of these changes to the FCC bylaws would affect the council's bylaws.
Yeah, that's right. There's no requirements to change at all. The community councils are completely independent organizations. Okay. Let's open up then to, there are some other changes in here as well, which are response to comments. I can go through those, or we can take comments and thoughts from other delegates. And I think we'll include delegates or alternative delegates. So who'd like to start?
This is Carrie from an alternate delegate, Sand Lake Community Council.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you.
Mhm. I have great concern here. One, this version, first of all, this whole process has not been properly noticed. There are the public participation, the lack of awareness is quite concerning and alarming and absolutely not according to protocol. I'm going to state that first. So I don't think that we should go any further discussing these bylaws because the proper people and the public are not at this table and part of the body that it affects.
Do you mind if can I just ask a clarifying question, Carrie?
This is for me to talk, Mike.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I was
Thank
just
you.
going to ask a clarifying question, but that's fine. I'll let you speak.
And I'm glad to answer in just a moment. So right now, I don't believe that this is even a worthwhile conversation to have because there's not enough awareness and the public participation. It is minimal. This is why the lack of proper notice is why there weren't people a part of this bylaw committee. And also, this is not the version that was shared with the FCC meeting on September 17th. So this is a completely different version that doesn't have a coalition of members. And so this is also concerning that changes are being made and it is not being communicated, and that is not okay. So I move to adjourn this subcommittee on these bylaws, and this whole process needs to restart, because now that citizens have become more aware, proper notice channels need to be abided by, and they will be accountable for. That's where I'm at, but I'm glad to answer any question.
Yeah, sure. Just to clarification, when did you become an alternative delegate?
In September.
Right, because I think your criticism here was that one of your criticisms was that this hasn't been discussed for long enough, and we have been discussing this since September last year within the FCC, within the Board of Delegates, the FCC.
This process started when the community councils all break for summer. It doesn't matter. This has not been properly noticed.
Right. So
and
it started
all of the board of meeting, if it's necessary, the meeting minutes throughout all of the community councils, and a request for an audit for the FCC. It has not been properly noticed.
So that is factually incorrect. This process started in September last year when we had a training session about organization of nonprofits. It continued in November last year when we had a second training session about organization of nonprofits. We had a strategy meeting, or we had a meeting, basically a one-day meeting in March. The first 2 days, really. The first day was a meeting of the FCC itself about our strategy and long terms. And then on the following day, we had a meeting focusing on.
That's so.
Right. Again, I think there's a confusion here between
that we need to adjourn this bylaw subcommittee meeting and start over again. I move to adjourn this subcommittee and restart. So
my understanding is the delegate can do that. We're allowing you to speak as an alternative delegate. A delegate can do that. If there's any delegates here who want to raise that motion, they should do so. Bruce, I see your hand up. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Could you may be muted.
There, okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, Bruce Schulte, President, Bayshore Cloud Community Council. I do have some concerns about this process. Now, I understand that the group that is considering these changes has been at this for quite some time. However, the membership, the people in our community who will be affected by this, only became aware of this at our September meeting, and it was quite a surprise. And I'll be frank with you, this kind of recess activity is the sort of thing that the Assembly usually does when they're trying to skirt something past us that they know the communities will not support. We were presented with a small portion, a snippet at best, of these proposed changes at our September meeting, and then informed that the entire package of bylaws changes was going to be voted on in the very near future before we even had a chance to meet again. This is wildly inappropriate. We were not informed. However, however much you may think due process has been followed, it has not been. Our community council has not been aware of this process. We've not been aware of the scope of the changes. And I would urge you to table this entire matter, come up with a finalized draft, distribute that for everybody to look at for several months, and then take it up for a vote. Anything less than that, I think, is wildly inappropriate.
Okay. So you made a comment there about the changes that affect you. Can you say a little bit more about what you think they are, please, Bruce? I just want to understand this because I'm still confused from my point of view. I'm hearing a lot of concerns, but every time a specific concern is raised, it isn't relevant to this particular change. So there probably are changes. I just don't understand what they are. So if you could share that.
I'll preface this by saying I can't give you point by point what changes will affect us because I haven't seen the full document. Let's start with that. That's a fundamental problem.
Right.
I will tell you that what I am aware of is that our representation on the FCC will be diminished. It will be distilled down from one voice out of whatever it is, 32, 33, I don't know.
37, yeah.
37, okay. One voice out of 37 to an echo in a room with 6 other people that may or may not even represent our community council. That's not okay. That is a fundamental change in how our community interacts with the FCC and with the Assembly. And that is a significant enough change that alone warrants a broader discussion. Now, these further changes that change the FCC's responsibilities, who they're accountable to, what they can and cannot do, those affect us. That affects the community council's voice in the community. The FCC is not supposed to be a replacement. They're supposed to be a conduit for our communications with our elected officials. And that's not happening. That's being affected. That's my concern. And I can't tell you specifically point by point which of the items, changed items will affect us because I haven't seen it. And as was just pointed out, the draft that you guys are talking about today is not even the draft that I've seen.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, obviously, what we're presenting today is the changes based on comments we've received since the September meeting. So we could share the September draft, which was communicated widely. We could share that instead. I thought it would be more useful to start with the changes. We've heard some of the concerns. So we started with the changes we've made since then. The one that's actually on the table now, the one that's on the table with the FCC Board of Delegates is the September draft. These are suggested changes. The purpose of the Bylaw Committee is to look at suggested changes and to decide whether we want to propose those as amendments. So the purpose of today's meeting is primarily Bylaw Committee. So we're responding to concerns that have been raised, proposing changes that hopefully will help with those concerns, and then potentially in September, we might bring forward another alternative or, changes which are in response to the concerns we've heard. But the September
Let me ask
version,
you, when does this
September
group
version
intend
is the
to
one which
vote
is
on this? When do you intend to vote on this?
Probably November
Okay.
is when the intention is. That would be the normal pattern of we introduced it. Well, we introduced it. We had a work session back in August, I think it was, or July. I can't remember. We've had multiple meetings. We brought it up as a report for every meeting since April. And we then introduced it formally in September. We discussed it. We intend to discuss it in October. And then the intention is to vote in November,
you are
but
aware
I
that the
don't know.
community councils recess all summer long, correct?
I'm
Our
aware
last
that
meeting
some
was in
do,
May.
yes. Some absolutely do, not all of them do.
Ours does and has for 20 years.
Right.
So we were not duly informed. Now the motion has been made to table this matter. I second that motion. I call for a vote.
So just checking, you are a delegate, correct, Bruce?
I'm the president of the Bayshore Clark Community Council. Yeah,
Are you a
I'm
delegate?
a delegate.
Are you a delegate?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were moving that. So do we get, can I
Yes.
have a second from a delegate, please? Marilyn, I know your hand has been up. Please go ahead.
I will second it for
Thank you.
purposes of conversation, but
Thank
I
you.
do have other questions.
Okay, so it's probably, go ahead. I mean, it should, hopefully it's relevant to the question of adjournment anyway, but or tabling. But please go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay. What Bruce was talking about as far as limiting the involvement of community council delegates, that is one big concern I had. I appreciate the explanation of the differences, that these bylaws are really for the workings of the FCC and its business, not relative to each community council. That each community council maintains its working bylaws, and so they are really two separate things. Am I correct with that, or what am I missing?
Yeah, each community council has its own bylaws. As I said, each community council is an independent organization. The FCC provides support for that organization,
Right.
administrative support primarily, and other resources.
Right.
It's the FCC itself isn't a conduit. I think that was a misstatement earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe it acted like that in the past, but that is no longer an option. The FCC is just a way of providing support, which includes meeting support, convening meetings, etc., sharing notices, publishing agendas. So
Yes.
I know one of the actually I'm not going one of the misunderstandings appears to be that the FCC itself speaks for community councils, and it doesn't.
Okay, I think the misunderstanding comes from the new bylaw diagram and that we were given at our meeting. Can you see that one? I don't know.
Yeah, understand.
Where the responsibility of the election of a board of directors from the members to comprise the board of directors would be 7 to 11 members versus one from every council. And I think that is the issue as far as community councils not having their voice.
Right. So it's, yeah.
I don't know if
so
you
that
can
would be,
help understand that.
yeah, sure.
Help me understand better.
So this is based on a problem in the way things are set up at the moment. So in fact, this discussion is probably a good example of that problem sometimes, or an example of the problem. So delegates can change in theory every month. So anytime there's elections or any change to the community council, the delegate could change. So we have an organization, a nonprofit, which has a controlling board of 30, in principle 37 members, but it varies because a lot of community councils either don't elect delegates or the delegates don't come along, and there's a provision that if they don't come along 3 meetings, they're no longer seated. So they just have to come along and then they are again. So we have a, maybe 30 to 32 typically active delegates. And in principle, every month there could be a different set. So, and you often see that. You often get people who change, regularly. As it's it's good that we have new people. So Carrie is an example of someone who's very, very new. And that's really healthy. What makes it difficult, though, is effectively every single thing you're dealing with as a board effectively has to be you have to start from day one on every item every time, because you have a different audience each time. So no business, no functioning organization ever is structured that way. The normal organization, you would have a board of directors who change and churn, but not every single month to new members. You would have something where there's where there's the expectation of kind of a learning period and people have time to sort of understand what the issues are. And we don't currently have that in our current structure. And that's caused just a lot of logistical difficulties. So a better model, and a very common model in most board of directors, you have a membership, and then the membership elect people who are prepared to devote more time, to actually invest more time in the organization, to spend more of their own time in that organization, in the FCC itself, not community councils, and take on the responsibility that comes along with that. So there is fiduciary responsibility. If you're a director, you have responsibilities to the organization, you have responsibilities to the IRS effectively through the community council, through the fact it's a non-profit, a 501c3 non-profit. In our current structure, every time someone's elected as a delegate, they effectively acquire those responsibilities, whether they know about them or not, whether they like them or not. So that's having a more deliberate process for not just being a delegate to represent the community council when things are being discussed across community councils, but to have a more deliberate step for then actually jumping in and getting involved in the organization, more involved in the organization of the FCC itself and the running of the FCC itself. That two-step process is generally the best, is a better way of doing it. And that's again the advice we receive from other nonprofits.
Can I have a follow-up, please?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay, well, that I understand what you're saying, and it is difficult for the FCC folks who have to work with all of the community councils to bring every new person up to speed. I think that's being up to speed is incumbent on the new person, but. So how would the information that the 7 to 11 members gain at the board meetings get disseminated back to all the community councils? I think that is a big problem that people are worrying about. So how would that work?
Board meetings are public, first of all, and minutes are distributed to everyone on the mailing lists, which would include at least delegates, but anyone else who chooses to join the mailing lists. So they're noticed, they're open to the public. We would have at least a public comment period, and the minutes and information is distributed. And again, this is the board meeting. The intent is to have board meetings less often than once a month, because at the moment we split our time roughly 50-50 between internal FCC things and community councils talking about broader issues that affect community councils. What we'd like to do is have a lot more of the latter and less of the former, because once we're stable, there should be less need to sort of change policies and change procedures and deal with all the budget issues and the other internal things to the FCC. So the expectation is we'll have board meetings maybe quarterly, but we'll continue with the coalition meetings monthly. So we can devote more time to community councils working together, getting information from other resources, sharing information, etc., and bringing up topics that are relevant to community councils. So it's more time for coalition work.
So are you saying then that all of the community council delegates then would meet still?
Oh yeah, that's happening every month. So that's what the coalition meeting is. So currently we have in our first hour, we have monthly meetings. In our first hour, it's internal FCC things. In our second hour, it's coalition. What we want to do is change. So every month we have a coalition meeting, which will probably be an hour and a half or 2 hours. Okay. And then
with
4 times a year.
Council delegates.
Yeah, all community council delegates are welcome that. And again, it's a public meeting, so public is welcome as well. But that would be a meeting of all delegates. That's the coalition work. And then we would have, when it comes to issues that come up for internal to the FCC, the organization of the FCC, that would happen probably quarterly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And again, the responsibility would primarily be on the 7 to 11 members. And there's a mechanism for, recalling members, and there's other things in the proposed bylaws, the same as there always should be.
Okay. And just as an aside, I don't think we should throw away all of the work that has been done. And this new draft, I think it's called the red draft because it's so.
Yeah, this is version 4. It's not actually very different from version 3. It's just a couple of changes.
Yeah, but it should be on a website, which
I thought it was, but
I couldn't find
maybe
it
it isn't.
this weekend
Okay.
when I was looking, but I'll go back and look.
I'll check with Ali. I'll ask Ali after this.
Yeah, so if it is posted with the red lining, then I can print it out or maybe call the FCC office and maybe get a couple of copies of it so we have a visual for our meeting tonight, so people can look at it more closely.
Thank you. Ali, I think you had your hand up for some questions.
Yes, I'm actually raising my hand on behalf of Pamela Rigor, who is
Okay.
having some technical difficulties. Pamela?
Thank you so much. And Mike, you
Thank
know
you,
me
Pamela.
with my technical. I'm so sorry.
I
First
had
of all,
problems earlier, so I empathize.
first of all, I'd just like to say that we have been concertedly working on this since March, and the whole concept started before, when we started breaking out the meetings from the FCC portion of it to the coalition portion of it. So this has been a long time coming, and I think this misunderstanding only emphasizes why it's so important for a nonprofit to have a solid base, as opposed to the circling in and out of community council delegates / alternates. Having this much more clear view of what a nonprofit is, because a nonprofit can accept grants. It can do all kinds of things that councils cannot do. And the councils themselves, and please, Daryl, if I'm absolutely incorrect, step on me. The council itself is under the charter. The FCC is not. It is an entity, a nonprofit entity. The councils are not nonprofit. So again, just to reiterate, the FCC provides services and support to councils, which is how they get some of their funding. Now, in those areas, we have training, you have your printing, you have your emails that are going out, your new website that's gone up, your 2 working people in the office. That all supports what the councils do. I personally, as a delegate, have been giving these reports to my council for the last 2 years. And for the last solid year, giving them the division of duties, so to speak, and the benefit that will come to the councils. Because if you've been to council meetings, you know that even in the old aspect, before it became 2 sections, that you had 38 individual councils trying to give 2 minutes of updates, that it was just mind-boggling because you could not keep track of it. We had no discussions. There was no interactions. So hopefully this, what I see, is making those things possible, to actually figuring out what areas, as in our last meeting, where the FCC office picked up the 2 things that are continuous discussions, and we actually put them on the board and discussed them as a full group. Those are the kinds of things that I see help us move forward. As far as throwing this all out, that is just not to be recommended. First of all, these have been up there, and as you've said, this is Vision 4, though it's marked Draft 2. And the whole purpose of bylaw changes is to put them out and to get input, which is what's happening here, which is what the red is. That's input. And so it's not finished. We don't want to look at a finished document. We want to look at the draft with all of the changes. You don't take them out. And then as a group, you accept them or decline each one of those areas. So that really is the full scope of having participation and to being transparent. The other thing that I think is very important here is that the intent, as I see it, is not to finalize everything tomorrow or based on a committee's work in the committee, but as a full group, which we have yet to say when that final vote will be taken because we're still in the process of working on this. So I'm just really concerned that there's all kinds of upheaval and chaos that's really unnecessary. And it's very sad because trying to structure something so that it's workable for everyone is the goal here. At least that's been my experience. And so if you have questions, please give questions, but ascertaining an answer before you come with the question is not really a question. So I hope that the delegates themselves will continue to work forward to try to do the best that they can for the coalition of community councils, and realizing and being thankful for the fact that there's an FCC that can give us support, because I don't know that each one of us could afford to do the printing or our own websites or get our own things up and going. We certainly could not accept grants and try to make those things work in our communities. So there's a give and take here, and the FCC has no oversight over our bylaws, no oversight over our individual ability to run our councils or communicate out to our councils. And every FCC delegate has the responsibility to get that information back to their council. Now, as a council president, I will tell you that we have anywhere between 28 and 68 people at a meeting. They are not always the same people. 10 of them might be, 20 of them might be. But communicating to them is not easy. And that's right in my own neighborhood. So I just ask that we rethink and step back a minute, take a breath, and try to do the best we can for all of us moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Just before we move to Alex, can Ali, I just have a question for you. Could you just check the website and which version of the draft is on there? Hopefully, I know it contains the version that was presented in September at our September meeting, and it should do. But if you could just confirm when you're ready whether it contains this draft or not, I'm not sure. But if it doesn't, that's fine. September is the one that's currently on the table.
September is
I'll move to-
currently posted. I can clarify
Okay.
this. September is the
Okay.
one that is currently posted. This version has not been posted yet. However, I did send you a message regarding to posting it.
Okay, great. So as I said at the beginning, the September one is the one that's actually on the table at the FCC delegate meeting, and will continue to be on the table at our October meeting. The purpose of Bylaw committee is to sort of consider changes, and that's what we're showing now. Right, Alex, I'll go to you. Please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to chime in here in kind of defense of the process that has played out. I've been an FCC delegate for the Eagle River Community Council for just over a year, and I'm actually in the process of phasing out because unfortunately I got the opportunity to serve on a board that has a board meeting the exact same time as the FCC meetings. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to make it to the next few and won't make it to the rest. But I just kind of wanted to chime in that I remember about a year ago, this whole process started. There was an open call at the FCC meetings, which are once a month, saying, hey, we have our bylaw committee meeting, and if you're interested in being part of reforming and reshaping these bylaws, please join the committee. It's been an open call for over a year, and I think I don't want to call anyone out in this meeting, but it seems like some people just didn't know about that, and then now they're very upset because they weren't involved. But this is a process that's been playing out, and just because you weren't involved doesn't mean it didn't follow a fair process. And I've been on bylaw committees for student government when I was back at UAA, and it's done in a committee. It's not done as a whole group because it's a very laborious task that is not best played out with 25, 30 people sitting around a room. And I think right now is a prime example of how the process is working, right? The a draft was introduced at the last FCC meeting. There was feedback, there was concerns. The bylaw committee got together and said, hey, let's address these concerns. They put forward a new draft, and that is what is being discussed today. So I think it's really unfortunate that some members here are really impugning the motives of this volunteer group of people that are doing a pretty extensive overwrite of the FCC bylaws, which are probably well needed because they looked pretty dated. So it's, for me, I'm excited that these are getting refreshed and making more sense of what it means to govern a nonprofit. So I hope everyone here can, if we do end up having to vote on adjourning the meeting, that we don't adjourn the meeting. I think this is very helpful. And I hope people that kind of came here with malicious intent can kind of realize that this has been a very open process, and the process right now is playing out. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Carrie, please go ahead.
Thank you. Several things.
Thanks.
Certainly the implication is that I'm the one who is thinking that it's malicious. What I absolutely want to clarify that I would definitely have been a part of this bylaw committee had it been noticed properly. I'm going to have to go back to that. I can share with you that our primary FCC delegate did not advise our community council on the bylaw changes topic whatsoever. Our president didn't know, so citizens can only go with the information that is being provided to them. Again, maybe not again, but additionally, I would like to add that, my question is the FCC organization actually fulfilling the grant that has been provided to them? Looking at that agreement, it's $203,000 plus that the grant is for, and only $17,000 is designated for the specific scope that the grant is provided for. That's concerning to me. So I sort of feel like we're here in this position that the FCC is not doing their job equipping and coordinating and providing the services that the grant is for, because the citizens are showing up. But again, it goes back to being properly noticed, being properly equipped, and the FCC doing the duties that they have funds for. So I think that also needs to be looked at. Definitely glad this process just needs to be restarted, like properly noticed. Take this draft. I'm not asking to start from ground zero, although there are components. The membership component also is concerning for the community councils, because there is zero. The FCC does not have a statutory relationship with the muni, and it doesn't have a statutory relationship with the community councils. It is literally just an administrative service nonprofit organization. That's it. There's a lot that needs to be discussed here, but definitely take some of the pieces and not throw all of it away for these bylaws, but definitely greater discussion with a greater public participation and awareness is an absolute must. And I therefore also restate would like to encourage people to vote on the motion to cancel to stop this and restart this process.
Right. Just looking at, I see, sorry, I just have to go back to this window. Evelyn, I see you there. Are you a delegate or a alternate delegate?
Who, me?
Evelyn, yeah, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, I am not. I'm just
Okay.
a
We'll have the opportunity for public comment at the end of this process, but we still have a motion in front of us. So Bruce, you actually moved the motion. So we'll come back to you. Bruce, I can see you're still on mute. Okay, maybe we're not ready for Bruce's.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Thank you. Please go ahead.
The app does not work as well on my iPhone as it does on the computer.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, my motion was simply to table this document until a final document was available for review by all the affected community councils, and that they would then be given time to review and comment before a final vote is taken. I don't have any malicious intent. This has been a very interesting discussion. I don't disagree with some of the proposed solutions to the challenges of the FCC. They all seem very reasonable. However, the document that you guys are talking about it's been a moving target. It's not been available for review, and it needs to be. It's curious. The previous speaker mentioned the statutory relationship of the community councils and the FCC. I think that's a fundamental question that should be answered. What is the statutory authority whereby the FCC, on behalf of the community councils, is changing its bylaws and thus its relationship to both the community councils and the municipality? Those are valid questions, and they should be answered. I'm not suggesting that there's any nefarious intent, but I am suggesting that this has not been properly conveyed and noticed. And I can tell you absolutely that the members of my community council were shocked and quite taken aback that this was so far down the road before they ever saw even a draft, and even that draft has now changed. So I've already made the motion, and I encourage the members to support tabling. I'm not talking about throwing it out. I just want to table this until you have a final document that can then be presented, and with perhaps a narrative to explain both the overriding need for such a change and some of the details that may very well be reasonable, but people need to understand them better. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
So, I'm sorry, Mike, if I could step in.
Can I
have
just,
a question
I'd
for
like to
Bruce.
respond. I'd like to respond first to Bruce,
Oh,
please, Pamela,
absolutely.
and then I'll give you the chance to speak. So one thing I'd like to ask as clarification, and second thing, I think you stated something which is probably a misunderstanding. So for clarification, what we started talking about, because that's said in the bylaw committee, what we're doing is we've already approved, to move on to present the version which was shared in September. So we already approved that we'll present that in September to the Board of Delegates. We did that in September. That is the actual item that's on the table. Draft 2, I'll call it draft 2 because that's what's written on the screen here. Draft 2 was a version which responds to many of the comments we've received about the thing that was presented in September. So what we as a bylaw committee were going to discuss is whether these are appropriate responses, whether we support these potential changes, and then present this as an alternative in our October meeting. So we'll present the original one that was proposed in our October meeting. We'll continue that discussion because that's the one that's actually on the table. And then we would also show here's some responses to some of the concerns which the Board of Delegates can adopt if they wish. So that's what we're here to discuss. That's what we're originally here to discuss today. So is your motion to not push the draft 2 version until the September thing is understood and the Board of Delegates has had a full discussion of that? Or is it something else? Because I think in terms of practical, I think what I'm hearing is the latter, that we shouldn't move on with any other changes until there's been another discussion of the September proposal.
No, that was not my intent. My intent was that the process be tabled until you have a final document that you're prepared to present to all the community councils. Because right now
we did that last month.
Okay, but so this is where you're losing me, because you're saying that there is a final product that was presented in September, but then there's version 2. Those are two contradictory statements.
No, they're
Either
not.
you have a final document or you don't have a final document.
No, there was we'll call it final because it's the final draft, right? So the final draft was presented in September. That is the document which is in front of the Board of Directors. Now, as a responsible organization, what we're doing is we're listening to the feedback and comments which came both into the September meeting and subsequent to the September meeting. And we as a subcommittee, we're going to look at potential changes that would address those comments. The final draft is still the final draft. This would be, the draft 2 is a response to the concerns on that final draft. So the final draft was a final draft in the sense of we think it covers we covers all of the things that were necessary for a new set of bylaws, and we can just stay there, right? And then any changes can come forward just in the normal Board of Delegates meetings. That's completely fine. But as a subcommittee, it's reasonable, because we've looked at this and we've spent a lot of time thinking about it. It is reasonable for us, the subcommittee, to come forward with some potential changes to that final draft, which addresses community concerns. And that's what we were doing today. So that's what draft 2 is. So I think what I'm hearing then is you would rather us not discuss draft 2 and continue on the process with the final draft being more widely distributed. It was distributed to all, to everybody within the meeting packet at the Board of Delegates in September, and that's, as I said, the same one that's on the table now, or is the same one that will be on the table at the October meeting. This meeting is just a discussion about whether we want to preemptively come up with some potential solutions to community concerns and have that ready in October.
What is the October meeting? What date?
Ali, I'm going to ask Ali. I don't have it right in
October
front of me.
15th.
15th.
Okay.
Mike, could I just?
And then, yeah, sorry.
Well,
If you just
hang
want
on
to
just
make
a
your
second.
comment, Bruce, and then we'll go to Pamela.
Yeah, so the FCC met on September, I forget the exact date, but
yeah,
our community council met the next day. So nobody in our community council had an opportunity to look at the whole document. In fact, all we had was a very small portion of it, which dealt specifically with the representation of the separate community councils to this to the FCC committee. That was the only portion of this bylaws change that we even had an opportunity to discuss. So now you're talking about a completely different draft, or an expanded draft that we haven't even had, our community council had not yet seen. You're going to take that up on October 15th, and our community council doesn't even meet until the 16th. So we have no opportunity to see the finished product and to comment on the finished product. Now, which is problematic. It really does sort of undermine the whole notion of public input. To your earlier point, you keep describing a final draft, but then propose changes that the FCC may choose to make. So it almost sounds like you're asking the broader community to buy into something and buy into the notion that the FCC or this other committee will just change that thing that they bought into. That's not really the process.
Well, the process is that the Board of Delegates can make changes to the bylaws when they choose to. So there is a notice period beforehand, but they can make changes to the bylaws by a 2/3 majority of the Board of Delegates, and that could happen in principle at any meeting. So there's a notice period beforehand, but they can make those changes. That continues. That's no different. What we've done as a subcommittee is we've done a complete rewrite of the bylaws. We've created a set of bylaws that are consistent with best practice for nonprofits, consistent with the current situation in the FCC, and we published those. That's what we're calling the final draft. Now, any responsible organization, especially one that's trying to listen to public input, would listen to the criticisms and concerns of that, and at least have something ready that addresses some of those criticisms and concerns. That's what we were doing today. So this is a completely normal, I would say, a very good process of the final draft was presented. That's on the table of the Board of Delegates. The Board of Delegates makes the decision. If there was no concerns, maybe it could even have gone through in October. Clearly, it's not going to go through in October. It's completely fine. We originally said November would be kind of when we expect, but the Board of Delegates can make that decision by themselves. If 2/3 of them want to vote on it in October, they can. If 2/3, I don't think they should, but in November, 2/3 of them may choose to vote in favor of it. So that's the function of that Board of Delegates group, is the one that manages, that's responsible in a director sense for the nonprofit. Again, there isn't a requirement for community councils individually to control this process, because this doesn't touch community councils. It doesn't affect community councils directly, as long as we are achieving the support role which we need to achieve, which we need to do as part of our grant. And I welcome a discussion in the future about whether we are or not. as long as we achieve those goals, the internal structure of the FCC is not something that the community councils have, control over, except through their delegates. So,
Okay.
but
Mike,
yeah. So what we
I'm
have now.
sorry,
So what we have now. Please go ahead, Pamela.
I really need to, so one thing is we are out of order. You cannot ask, this motion on the floor is out of order. This is not a delegate meeting. This is a bylaw meeting and an executive meeting. We are discussing bylaws. Only the community councils as a coalition can have an up or down vote about whether they want to table these minutes, so this draft. And the second thing is, I would encourage everyone not to use the word final, because as long as the word draft is on there, there is nothing final. So this is a continuum. And again, there was no deadline given for when this vote would come. That is the council's decision to make. I would encourage councils to be more involved. And I understand more than anyone that you cannot be at every single meeting. But you do need to read the recaps that come out, and you do need to follow through on those things. And again, I have to state that this confusion is an exact reason why you have to have more stability, because we have delegates that come in, they get new delegates that come in. You heard Eagle River say they're not going to be a delegate. You have alternates come in. From the council's perspective, for my council at least, I want to say it's very important to have your delegate and your alternate delegate delineated, and when they have access and when they have a vote, so that there's no confusion there. There's no doubles, there's only singles. And so I just contend that the motion is out of order. It is not now for us to do, and that this work needs to continue as asked by the complete coalition of councils, that this draft will go forward, is my understanding, in October. That meeting, we will look at whether this is a continuum, at what point we're going forward, if there are more information that needs to be sent out, if there's more additions or subtractions to the draft. Those are all in play, but it is not the responsibility of a committee to make those decisions. Thank you.
Well, if I may just respond to that.
Okay, go ahead, Bruce.
I mean, Pan's contention. Well, first of all, let me just point out, our community councils had the same president for 5 years. We've had the same delegate to the FCC for 20 years. So continuity is not an issue with Bayshore Clat. If indeed this committee, I'm getting kind of mixed messages from Pam, because either it's a committee prerogative or it's a decision of the broader community councils. Is it one or is it the other? My contention is and first of all, I appreciate all the work that's been done in this. All of us are volunteers. Nobody gets paid for this. Most of us don't get paid for this. So I do appreciate the effort, and I don't disagree with the premise that the bylaws probably needed to be looked at, and I probably agree with many of the proposed changes. My point is simply transparency and proper notice, and I don't think that has taken place. And if you want to get buy-in, if you want to not get pushback from various community councils, I think you ought to pump the brakes. Put whatever you're calling it, whether it's your draft X or final draft or latest final draft, call it whatever you will, but send something out to all the community councils and say, this is what's on the table. And we're not going to vote on this for 2 months, so that you guys have an opportunity to discuss this with your community. If you want buy-in, that's the way to do it.
Right. So that's basically where we are. That's where we were at the beginning of this meeting, and without any change in this meeting, in the subcommittee meeting, that's exactly where we stay. So it was all sent out as part of the meeting packet for the September meeting, and again, it's been circulated pretty widely before that. So at the September meeting, we formally introduced the bylaw changes. It'll be up for discussion in October. We don't expect to vote until November. I'm happy as chair to recommend that the body doesn't vote, but I only have one vote. So the body may choose to vote in October. I don't think they will. So the current trajectory is that the draft that was presented in September is going to be discussed in October and probably voted on in November, which is exactly what you said you wanted. So that's where we are today anyway. Marilyn.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I'm having a hard time reading any of this second draft red line issue or copy. And I would like to see both. I have my copy of the first draft that we were given in September and have read through it and so forth. I would like to have at the October meeting on the 15th, the red line copy as well. So I can, see what people's concerns were. So I can decide whether or not they have addressed the concerns Rogers Park has. I'll find that out tonight, what their concerns are. But this is a work in progress. And we, as delegates to the FCC from the community councils, elected the bylaws committee to do this work. And they have done a good job. It's a hard job. And it's a long, tedious job. And I think at the October meeting, we had both copies, the draft we have in September. Please bring your draft so we don't waste paper, but bring your draft 2 with the red lines so we can see how concerns have been addressed. And then the real conversation could occur. Then in November, we can think, until November, we can think over what these concerns are and whether we need to add more information on the red copy. So, I got this in September and I was not able to be, we haven't met. We're meeting tonight and I will present this draft that we got in September, but I will inform them of this other draft 2. And I will encourage everyone to go to the website and look at it, in their own good time to be more informed. And I'm going to ask people to please write down what their concerns are and give them to me. And I could maybe address them tonight or later in an email. But I do not favor tabling this. I do not favor starting over. I think we should look at what draft 2 has, compare it to draft 1, and move on from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll respond to Pamela's point about this motion not being in order. I don't quite agree with that, but I understand where that's coming from. I think because a motion here cannot stop won't stop the process because that's happening in the Board of Delegates meetings anyway.
Right.
So there will be a presentation of a continued discussion of the item that's introduced in September at the October meeting. That's going to happen anyway. What the motion can do is stop the bylaw committee, and I think delegates do have an option to vote in this meeting. But the bylaw committee could not recommend these particular changes in draft 2, and actually I would recommend we don't sort of put our stamp of approval under the changes in draft 2 because I don't think we have time to go through them in detail in this meeting in the remaining time. So what that means is basically we'd be in a similar situation to what Marilyn just discussed. So the September proposed bylaws were discussed beforehand, work session on them beforehand, but they were introduced formally in September. There'll be another discussion of them at our October delegate meeting. And then at least I will recommend that we don't vote in the October meeting. But if 2/3 of delegates want to do so, they can. That's the nature of democratic bodies. And then we will probably continue that discussion until November. And that gives plenty of time for community councils to look at things. We may bring forward at least a commentary on the comments we've heard so far, criticisms we've heard so far, and address those. And that might include the some of the language in draft 2 for the Board of Delegates to consider at a future meeting. But I think what we could move forward to a vote if you want, but the effect of this vote would be that we don't kind of put our stamp of approval on the draft 2 as something to present to the Board of Delegates our October meeting. And I think at this point that's moot. That's a moot question anyway. So if anyone wants to call a question, they can. If not, I think I would suggest we move on to our other topics. But before that, I'd like Carrie and Michael to speak.
This is Michael. I'm the president of the Tourniquet Arm Community
Thanks,
Council.
Michael. Carrie was in front of you, but Carrie, do you mind if Michael goes first? Please go ahead, Michael.
So I appreciate everybody's efforts here. We meet as a community council, meet quarterly. In September, we met before the FCC meeting, and our next meeting will be in December. So based on the time frame, I won't have an opportunity at all to address our community council members with the drafts. So if the timeline was pushed out, it might be a little better. My only other option would be to send them all an email. And I suppose that is an option, but it's sometimes better when you meet in person and hear the people speak as opposed to sending out emails that they may or may not get. And it doesn't really give them an opportunity to comment on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Carrie. Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
The aspect of going back to the proper notice is that my concern is that the bylaw committee could have had substantial additional members to participate and lighten the load. So that would be, if we move forward, can the bylaw committee expand?
Right, that seems like that's a completely fine motion to introduce at our October meeting. So I'd recommend you do so. Okay, I'm not seeing any more comments. As I said, I think if Marilyn's still okay holding on to the second for the motion, there is a motion in front of us. The effect of this is that we won't approve. The bylaw committee won't approve draft 2 to share with the share as an alternative with the board of delegates in October. My recommendation anyway is we don't do that. But if people want to go forward to a vote, I'm happy to do that if someone wants to do so. There is a motion on the table unless the second wants to withdraw their second.
I will withdraw the second. I just wanted to have draft 2 as a comparison. I didn't want to have a vote on it by any means to replace the draft that we got in September.
Okay. So what I think we'll do is, as additional information in the October meeting, as additional information, we will compile a list of the concerns we've heard and potential changes to the September, the bylaws from September, as potential ways to address those concerns. But it's up to the Board of Delegates to decide what they want to do with that. We won't have a recommendation from the bylaw committee. So on that basis, I think that we don't have a seconded motion on the table, and the effect of it would be exactly what we said. So on that basis, I think I'll just go back to the other members of the bylaw committee if they have any further comments. And if not, then we can adjourn the bylaw part of the meeting. We do have some other things to discuss on.
Mike, I do want to say that
sure.
you did offer the chance for some members of the public to comment. And
oh yes, yep, please, let's do that. Let's do that. Thank you so much, Ali. Thanks for the reminder. So, okay, we'll spend the next few minutes on on comments from the public. Evelyn, please go ahead.
Thank you. So just like observing and understanding what I'm hearing, I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing to do this. I know I've been part of a subcommittee, different groups in the past, and I understand how grueling it can be. However, I understand too that the ebb and flow of community councils in each area is a little different. And I don't think it's fair to have to say that you guys are. Let me go back a little bit. I feel that there's some mistrust in the community, unfortunately, of our processes, and I appreciate the efforts to minimize that with some of the bylaw changes that you're making, in the sense that you want it to be more stability. I'm totally all for that, and see a good outcome that can come of that. However, it does seem that you guys are trying to vote on this really quickly before the community is all the way on board. And since you are a supportive agency for the councils, and I know that we're separate, but we are connected. You exist to help us. It would make sense that there would be greater transparency, and we would be given that grace of a little bit more time to get everyone on board, or at least aware of a little more of the details, and provide that opportunity for more community education. And I know that you guys put a lot of work in this. You kind of want to vote on it and put it behind you and move forward so that you can create that stability and stuff. But at the same time, if there's this much of difficulties with transparency, of how it went out intentionally or unintentionally, I think that it's warranted that we have the time to be able to digest this, create some community awareness and education, and then be able to, all of us be able to move forward without any, um, further trust, if that makes sense. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Evelyn. Any other members of the public want to make comments? I'm not seeing any of the hands up. With any comments, if you can make them on the records by voice rather than through comment through the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any more
Hi,
more
yes,
comments.
I
Oh, hi.
did. So my understanding is that you can put out a draft, and then you're allowed to change it without notifying the public and giving them an ample amount of time to basically what Evelyn said was digest it. That is allowed.
So the draft was introduced and put out at least in September, in early September, as part of the meeting packet for the Board of Delegates meeting in September. The Board of Delegates, if they choose as a body, can make changes to that when they come to vote on it. That's just the way that Robert's Rules works. They said the draft is out. That's what we're discussing. That's the only thing that's on the table for the Board of Delegates to consider at the moment. The draft 2 is a way of addressing some of the concerns we've heard so far, but there are other ways of dealing with that. We can deal with that in the Board of Delegates meetings, which is probably the way we'll go now. But yeah, I mean, that's just the nature of democracy. The Board of Delegates can make changes to anything when they go through the process of voting. I would recommend they don't, but it's possible problems come up, typos are found. There's problems that are identified in a meeting, and if enough people in the meeting want to pass something, they can. But that isn't the best process. So at the moment, I think my expectation, I will definitely, as the chair, I will recommend that we don't vote in October. So that will mean it will be introduced in September. Community councils have end of September, October, first half of November to talk about it, and then it'll still be up in front of the Board of Delegates in November. And if enough people want to vote on it in November, they can do so.
Thank you for that. Basically, then what is considered enough time for you to give the public the information to process before a vote could be done? What is considered the allotted time for that? Is there any?
There's no public, I don't think there's a public notice requirement for what we do. We do give public notice, we always do, because they're public meetings. So we make sure the public can attend our meetings, board of delegate meetings, and we notice them. And we provide, plenty of advanced information about that.
If I recall,
I'm not
I think
sure
it's
what, sorry, Ali, if
24.
you have
I
a
think
specific
it's-
answer.
I think it's specifically we have to follow at least 24 hours in advance.
Yep, that's right.
But Ariana would definitely be the best answer to this. This is the policy that I followed here in the office.
Yeah, we typically do 7 days for public meetings for our board of delegates meetings.
Okay.
But
thank you very
24
much.
hours, I think, is the minimum we're required to. So, Derica, can you just say which community council you're a member of? Just so we have
Yes.
that in our records.
I'm speaking for the public here for Campbell Community Council.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay. We actually had this meeting scheduled till 2 o'clock, so I think we're going to have to reschedule some of the other items we have to cover before our next meeting. But Carrie, if you want to speak on this.
One last question real quick. When you are going to send out your, the most recent draft, what is your process specifically? I mean, so my question is, this went out to, it seems like it went out only, I'm just trying to figure out what the unawareness, what gap happened there. Did it go out only to the delegates? I mean, are these drafts not sent out because not all, sorry, I have too many questions. Not all community councils have delegates, some have vacancies. And so to bridge that gap, are you not sending it out also to the presidents and the executive board of each of the community councils so that it reaches actually the full public of who you're serving?
So
do you see what I'm saying?
So the September version, the one that was presented in September, which is the version that's actually on the
I'm not
body.
talking about September. I'm talking about through this whole process, through the whole year that you've been working.
Right.
So who has been receiving the emails and the updates of these?
Everybody was on our mailing list. The meeting, everyone on the mailing list.
Delegates? That's my question.
I don't know who's on the mailing list. The mailing list is much larger than just the list of delegates.
I am happy to give an answer to this if need be.
Yeah, please go ahead. How many people are on our mailing list, Ali?
When we send out recaps, those go out specifically to presidents and delegates, but any of our weekly newsletter items, those go out to the entire mailing list, and I am pulling the contact count for that right now for you. I do believe we are in the 6,043 total subscribers.
And so explain to me how this was, I mean, that is pretty astonishing if you're saying that this bylaw process is being pushed out and that so many people were not aware. I mean, that doesn't make, there's a gap there. That doesn't.
I can give.
But we can talk about that later. I'd like to just talk to you about that, just so that it improves that process. But so for this next push out, what can the public expect on the timing to be able to review it before the September 15th meeting? And where are they going to go?
The October 15th meeting will be addressing exactly the same thing that was presented in the September meeting. It's the same document.
Okay, but that doesn't address the notification process. How is that going to be?
It's the same notification process as we have for all of our other public meetings. So there was.
That's not my question.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Then could you restate it?
As a public citizen here, how am I going to become aware when you push this out so that I have an opportunity to review it? When am I going to know when that happens, and when?
You know now. I'm still confused by your question.
I'm here. So this is the mandatory notice that is required by law. So
what law? When you say required by law, what law are you referring to?
This is a legislative process.
No, it's not. It is not a legislative process. This is nothing to do with the Open. This is nothing to do with the Open Meetings Act.
The community councils and the community councils.
No, it doesn't.
You're mistaken. I can actually show you the law.
Mike, can I
Okay,
chime
Daryl,
in?
please go ahead and answer the question for me.
This is Daryl. Community councils are not subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act, our AMC 1.15 public meetings, and neither is the Federation. It's good to have good public process, but neither have to follow the requirements. They're not subject to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Community councils are not part of local government. It's not a legislative process. Community councils are part of the local government process, but they are not part of government.
They absolutely, the community councils are actually created under section 2.4 under the.
I'm very
legislative
familiar with
process.
that. And if you would like to shoot me an email,
I
will provide, let me finish, please. I will provide you with the legal opinion I requested from the municipal attorney's office in 2013. And it's very clear in that legal opinion, community councils are not part of municipal government. They were never intended to be. They're private neighborhood associations. And I'll provide you a copy. The Federation has a copy of the legal opinion. They might be able to provide it to you. I've shared it with many community councils.
I would look forward to our follow-up conversation, Daryl. Thank you. But that still doesn't answer my question. So how is the public going to know when this is pushed out and on what specific platform? Is it going to be pushed out in an email? Is it going to be pushed out on the FCC website? How are we going to familiarize ourselves and when?
Ali, can you take this?
Yes, I'm happy to answer this question for you, Carrie. So as soon as all documents are prepped, the delegates meetings are noticed a week in advance. Sometimes we send out 2 notices. They do go out via the program that we refer to as Constant Contact. So when you signed up as a delegate and I took your email down, I plug that into a system. Members of the public are more than welcome to request to be added to lists by sending us an email with their preferred email address that goes out through Constant Contact. Something that I was trying to highlight for you and did not get the chance just because we had moved on in discussion was that despite the fact that we do have a database of 6,000 people subscribed, only 2,200 people open our emails regularly. So I would say that part of it is also not everybody opens every single email they get, and that is understandable. So if anyone is interested in receiving further notifications regarding community council work or the Federation's work, they can email the info@communitycouncils.org, or they can sign up through the FCC website, which has a sign up list button available in the upper right-hand corner of the website at all times, irregardless of what page they are open on. All of the documents get posted in advance as well for delegates meetings. As soon as they become available, it is my job to turn around and get them uploaded under the FCC's page and make sure that everything's up to date there as far as meeting dates and times go and Zoom information and things of the like. So things are posted regarding meetings and delegates meetings a week in advance for this reason, to give people some time to go over the agenda and whatnot in advance. However, sometimes that does not always happen just due to last minute changes or timelines getting changed. So sometimes we put out a version 2 and that can come out a day or 2 before the meeting. We have sent out secondary notices letting people know that things have changed, but we always send out a 24-hour meeting notice in advance. For delegates meetings specifically, usually goes out the day before to remind people after their week in advance email that a delegates meeting is coming up and what topics are being discussed and which handouts are available and where to find them.
Thanks, Ali.
We also do
okay.
post about it on Facebook as well, if I recall.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So this meeting, I think, was scheduled until 2 o'clock. It's gone 2 o'clock. I know many others have other things to do. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Marilyn?
I would move to adjourn.
Thank you. I'm sure Sarah's in the process of seconding it.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the comments. It's clear there's misunderstanding of what these bylaws are. They don't affect community councils at all. Community councils are completely independent. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.